Based on their observations, the members of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists Science and Security Board find conditions in the world to be so threatening that they are moving the hands of the doomsday clock 2 minutes closer to midnight. It is now 3 minutes to midnight.
Investigations of people in various stages of radicalizing in all 50 states. This isn't a New York phenomenon or a Washington phenomenon. This is all 50 states, and in ways that are very hard to see. That is a message that goes out to troubled souls everywhere, resonates with troubled souls, people seeking meaning in some horribly misguided way. Those people exist in every state. And I have homegrown violent extremist investigations in every single state.
You lived in Pakistan, correct?
I lived in Lebanon.
Lebanon, okay. And you understand, you studied the Quran. Let's take the literal interpretation of the Quran. Infidels, jihad, the things that are in there. If taken literally, does that lead to what Robert Spencer is talking about?
Yes, that's exactly what they lead to, jihad against the infidels. We have a saying in Arabic, أولاً يأتي السبت وبعده الأحد. First comes Saturday, then comes Sunday. First we kill the Jews, then we come for the Christians. In the Middle East, the Islamic Middle East, there is no tolerance to any other faith or group of people. We minorities in the Middle East have been massacred, killed. My house was bombed. This is how I ended up in this country, as a refugee from the Middle East. It was happening when my parents were refugees, when I was a child, newborn, and here I am in America today, and my people are still fleeing because of the intolerance of Islamic extremism. So my past is America's future unless America wakes up now and takes the necessary steps.
What are the necessary steps?
Identify the enemy by name in order for you to devise a strategy to defeat it. Right now, we have a president at the White House who doesn't have the moral clarity and the courage to stand up and say what we are fighting. And we need to do that in order for us to defeat this enemy. It is Islamic terrorism. It's not Buddhist terrorism. It's not Jewish terrorism. It's not Catholic terrorism.
How many numbers are we talking about? The world has 1.6 billion Muslims. How many Muslims are we talking about?
We're talking about 1.2 billion Muslims in the world today. 15 to 25% are radicalized.
You're talking about 400 million, maybe?
We're talking about 300 million people who are ready to strap bombs on their bodies and blow us all up to smithereens. The top 5 Islamic countries, Indonesia, Nairobi, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Egypt, the average 77% support the establishment of Sharia law as the law of the state and the establishment of an Islamic caliphate.
We are not at war with Islam. We are at war with people who have perverted Islam.
Reactions to the line varied. A Fox News host said it was, quote, terrifying.
I mean, we are at war with people who are trying to kill us, and we have a situation where we are all fighting over who our enemy is, and the president won't say Islamic extremism.
Others pointed out how this is the same kind of rhetoric the administration has been pushing for a while now, trying to separate any legitimacy ISIS may have as a state or religious cause. Aside from combating extremist ideologies, President Obama called on the international community to bolster efforts to promote development and to fight corruption, 2 factors he says terrorists can use to draw the youth to their cause.
Where young people have no education, they are more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and radical ideas because it's not tested against anything else. The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. Conspiracy theory.
The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam.
American police and security officials on alert tonight after a terror message. ISIS, the group ravaging Iraq and Syria, renewing its call to followers to launch attacks here in the U.S. It comes as that extraordinary march was taking place in Paris. Look at all those people, more than 1 million of them defying terror. Also tonight, another new video showing one of those Paris attackers appearing to pledge allegiance to the ruthless leader of ISIS.
All right, so my question is, we got the red line that seems to match the red horse. Could ISIS be the black horse? So I just put some photos up for you. Guess what? They wave black flags around. They don black uniforms. And this is something novel. This is something new. I mean, months ago, nobody even knew about ISIS. Suddenly, they seem to pop out of nowhere. Really, they didn't pop out of nowhere. You know, there's just Al-Qaeda. They're rebranded, refunded, regrouped, Al-Qaeda in a more vicious form. But they pop up, and look at them. What happened to all the green that we used to see? Suddenly, black, black, black. After the red horse, the black horse. There's the omen written thousands of years ago about the Assyrian. There's quite a few scriptures about this, so I'm just going to pick two for you. This one happens to be very well known among Christians. Isaiah chapter 10, verse 24 to 27. O my people that dwell in Zion, be not afraid of the Italian. No. Don't be afraid of the Belgian. Don't be afraid of the French. Now, what other countries have we been picking on for end time? I hear all this and I think, why don't we just read the Bible? It doesn't say any of that. It says, don't be afraid of this one, the Assyrian. He shall smite you with a rod and shall lift up his staff against you after the manner of Egypt. Even compares it. Says history repeats itself. Just like it happened in Egypt, a great oppression of the Jews, so it will be again in the end times with the Assyrian. Verse 27, it shall come to pass in that day that his burden shall be taken away from off your shoulder, and his yoke from off your neck, and the yoke shall be destroyed because of the anointing. What's it talking about? Whose burden? The Assyrian's burden. Whose yoke? The Assyrian's yoke. The Assyrian is the future enemy that will require the anointing to destroy. The anointing, of course, is Jesus Christ. The anointing is the English word for the Greek word Christ. Christ is the Greek word for the Hebrew word Messiah. It's exactly the same thing. So there will be an ultimate enemy that will come that will require the anointed one to destroy. So our focus cannot be on the French, cannot be on the Belgian. We have been forewarned that the one to look at is the Assyrian. The problem is, if we don't know history, and I put myself in there, I was scratching my head for a long time. Thought, who is the Assyrian? Who is the Assyrian? You look on a map right now, there's no country called Assyria. There is a country called Syria. I'd say that's pretty close, but still, close. My dad says close only counts for horseshoes and hand grenades. So we want to be exact when it comes to the Bible. Isaiah 14, verse 25, I will break the Assyrian in my land, and on my mountains tread him underfoot. Then his yoke shall be removed from them, and his burden removed from their shoulders. Whoever is the Assyrian, he is going to invade Israel. He's going to be in the mountains of Israel before he gets destroyed. So if ISIS qualifies as Assyria, ISIS will be invading Israel. So the question is, what is Assyria? Where is Assyria? And you looked at, the empires, the ancient empires, they no longer exist today. So the boundaries of these nations, they don't match today's political boundaries. So you find that Assyria overlaps with Babylonia, right? Even overlaps a little bit with Medo-Persia. But you can kind of see that that's where Assyria is. Certainly includes Syria, but it seems to include a little bit of Babylonia, doesn't it? So I was scratching my head for a long time because I thought, I'm not going to look at Europe. I don't think that's where the Bible's talking about. I'm looking at the Middle East and I'm scratching my head, where is Assyria? And then you compare Assyria to ISIS, and guess what? That's it. There wasn't territory that matched it until a few weeks ago. You see, this is why we got to start with the Bible and stay with the Bible. Doesn't matter what the map looks like, doesn't matter what the news says, doesn't even matter what the most, best-selling famous prophet says. Just look at the Bible and just wait. It will come. It will happen. So now we definitely got the equivalent, the modern equivalent of Assyria. It's on the map now, and it's growing. The Black Horse took control of Iraq's largest oil refinery, Baiji. And one of their goals is to set the oil fields of Iraq on fire, because that would cripple the global economy. Would that not be a really fast way to cripple the global economy? You know how the price of things are determined is first by the price of oil, because the price of oil determines the price of transportation. And go back and read Revelation chapter 6. What are we talking about? We're talking about a financial disaster that is looming at the Black Horse sequence. When the Lamb broke the third seal, I heard the living being say, "Come." I looked up and I saw a black horse, and its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Right now, when I was little, merchants used to come with scales in Thailand and weigh things. That's how people, traded, did commerce. Today, we think, we hear scale, we think of weighing yourself. This is not about your own weight. This is a metaphor for the economy. So he's got a pair of commerce scales in his hand. And when I heard a voice from among the four living beings say, "A loaf of wheat bread and 3 loaves of barley will cost a day's pay, and don't waste the oil and the wine." So in other words, there's going to be inflation of food prices. And that's how people get mad. And that's how people start killing each other. Right? So what's happening around the world? You see inflation of food prices all over. The price of food is going up, and guess what? It's not going to stay there. It's going to keep going up. And the black horse is going to try to trigger something that will cause the cost of living to go up exorbitantly. So the black horse is simply hyperinflation.
I recently have seen fit to follow another course. I believe that the issues confronting us cross party lines. Outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy. For 3 decades, we've sought to solve the problems of unemployment through government planning, and the more the plans fail, the more the planners plan. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government. And freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Why are the feds preparing for a war against Americans? Why have they bought now more than 2 billion bullets, all kinds of arms and ammunition, and now more than 2,700 tanks to patrol in America and keep order? We're told it's because they love us. We're told it's to keep the peace and to increase safety. But of course, we also know from Army documents, from Homeland Security reports, and a lot of other information that it's really to occupy America and prepare for a civil unrest and a total economic collapse that will include gun confiscation.
Gun confiscation is exactly what happened during the state of emergency following Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans.
Bringing you breaking news about the ISIS terrorist group that's now operating on our southern borders. That's right, we've been talking about this for a long time. Obama's had this entire planned invasion into our country by illegals, taking Border Patrol away from their jobs and leaving these huge, wide-gapped areas open. Now we have news from Judicial Watch. They have gotten sources from the intelligence community and law enforcement that ISIS is now operating in Juarez, Mexico. If you don't know where that is, it's right across the river from El Paso, Texas. Now, in El Paso, Texas, FBI has a headquarters there. We have Fort Bliss, which is one of the largest military installations in America. Inside there, they have EPIC, which is an El Paso Intelligence Center, where there's a lot of high-ranking officials who work with the Border Patrol, CIA, things like that. That is a huge threat, and they're picking up radio chatter where they're saying that there is a threat that is imminent, and they're going to carry out an attack on the border, and that it is coming very soon.
Do you think we get a big fat war in the Middle East with this ISIS? I mean, they're doing dreadful things. They're cutting off the heads of Christians. You know, they took them down to the water, I guess, so they wouldn't have much of a mess to clean up. And they cut off 21 Christians' heads. I mean, it's outrageous. Do you think we're going to end up in a big nuclear war?
That's a great question. Well, there's two things that most people don't realize about this with the Middle East. One, and this goes back to the first thing is this pattern of a very specific pattern of warning and judgment. And the second harbinger of the 9 harbingers that appeared in ancient Israel is the harbinger of the terrorists. And that is that the first warning was a strike on the land that was done by terrorists. Literally, the Assyrians who did this in ancient Israel were the fathers of terrorism. They invented it. And the thing is, ISIS is like a descendant of that. And the thing is that, but the pattern is, first comes this strike on the land, it's limited, it's a wake-up call. But then as the nation does, if the nation doesn't turn back, after a number of years, as happened with ancient Israel, it gets re-engaged with the terrorists, and now comes an even greater calamity. Well, so I was always watching since the harbinger, is America going to get re-engaged with another form of, or with a terrorist, with the same thing, because that's the pattern. Well, ISIS, amazing, ISIS comes from the same exact spot that the ancient Assyrians do. This is the beginning of the harbinger pattern. They actually claim Syria and Iraq, which is ancient Assyria, the same people that brought judgment to ancient Israel. This launches the harbinger sequence. That's number one. Number two, the ancient Assyrians were known for being bloodthirsty. They mutilated people, and that's exactly what ISIS does. And the ancient Assyrians were especially known for beheading their victims and then putting them on display. And that's exactly what ISIS does. ISIS is like the reincarnation of ancient Assyria. So I believe this is ominous. And not only that, they took over Mosul, which is the capital of ancient Assyria. They now have the capital of this. So it's kind of like a replay. And when the president first announced that we're gonna have war with ISIS a little while back, it's actually just before the Shemitah began. It was the eve of 9/11, which is, I believe, is another ominous thing. So I've always been waiting to see if this is going to happen. Well, ISIS is like the return of the terrorists. So I believe this is an ominous sign, and this can lead. I mean, they are evil, and they should be, they should be stopped in whatever the case is. But to engage in all these things with America, while America is also heading rapidly away from God, is not a good formula. It's not a good combination. So I believe this is ominous. And the other thing, Greg, is there's a mystery that I put at the end of the book, the mystery of the Shemitah, which is called the mystery of the 7th Shemitah, which is going to link up with the Middle East. And that is this: every 7 years is the Shemitah, but every 7th Shemitah is a super Shemitah. 49 years ushers in the 50th year, which is called the Jubilee. And in the Jubilee, what happens, interesting, is that there is a restoration. If you lost your land, you get restored. If you lost your father's home, you get restored to your inheritance. It says everyone shall return home and they'll receive back their inheritance. Well, there's an amazing thing about end-time prophecy. It says that these things can't happen until Israel, Middle East, Israel comes back to the land. The Jewish people come back to the land, or you cannot have end-time prophecy. Well, the amazing thing is this mystery of the 7th Shemitah actually gives the exact time when these things have to happen. For instance, 1917 was the year of the Shemitah. In that time period, Israel is restored to the land. The British Empire gets Israel from the Turkish Empire, gives it to Israel, says return home. It's the restoration returning home. Well, if you count 70s or 7 sevens to the next 50th year or Jubilee restoration, the mystery of the Shemitah brings you to the year 1967. 1967, Israeli soldiers enter Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is restored. They come back to their ancient possession of Jerusalem, which is, still the controversy of the news. Well, the interesting thing, Greg, is that if you follow this mystery, and I'm not again saying it has to always continue, but the question is, when's the next 7th Shemitah? It is right now, 2015. And the period that would indicate, if something's going to happen, that there could be a major event in the Middle East, major war, but that results in something prophetic, is the period of September 2015 to September 2016. I'm not dogmatic, but I believe we should be aware of it. That's why, again, for the first time I put in dates. So all these things, again, are converging.